On the morning of August 3rd, 2016, a press release went out from Beaverton, Oregon. It was 4 paragraphs long. It ended with a golf company. Nike, the largest sporting goods maker on the planet, announced it would stop making golf clubs. It would stop making golf balls. It would stop making golf bags. The equipment side of Nike Golf was finished, effective almost immediately, with no buyer, no farewell tour, and no apology. And everyone who read that press release believed they already knew the reason why. The reason had a name, the reason had a red shirt. Tiger Woods had crashed into a fire hydrant, lost his marriage, lost his sponsors, and lost his back. He had not won a major in 8 years. The story wrote itself in every clubhouse in America. When the greatest golfer alive fell, the swoosh fell with him. Simple, clean, wrong. Because inside the company, the man who founded Nike had a different explanation, and he could fit it into a single sentence. You will hear that sentence before this video ends, but that is not what happened. Tiger Woods did not kill Nike Golf. The numbers show something stranger. The clubs were losing money while Tiger was still winning everything. They lost money through his greatest seasons. They lost money through the fist pumps and the Sunday Reds and the 14 majors. The scandal did not start the bleeding. The bleeding started on day one and never stopped. To understand how the richest company in sports spent 2 decades failing at golf, you have to go back to a handshake in 1996. The trail ends at a bet so large that nobody dared to measure whether it was working. In August of 1996, a 20-year-old amateur stood at a press conference in Milwaukee and said 2 words: "Hello, world." Tiger Woods had just turned professional, and Nike had just handed him $40 million over 5 years. At the time, it was the richest endorsement contract ever given to an athlete. Sports writers called it reckless. Rival executives called it worse. He had not won a single professional tournament, and Nike had bet more on him than some equipment companies were worth. Phil Knight did not flinch because Knight had run this play before. He had signed a rookie named Michael Jordan when the sensible money laughed, and the sensible money had spent a decade apologizing. Golf, Knight figured, was simply basketball with older customers and better real estate. The playbook would translate. The swoosh would carry it. Knight had built an empire on one idea. A great athlete wearing your logo was worth more than any factory you could ever own. Here's the detail most people forget. In 1996, Nike had almost nothing to sell a golfer. There were no Nike irons. There was no Nike ball. Tiger played Titleist clubs and a Titleist ball under a separate deal. Nike sold him shoes, shirts, and a hat. That was the whole catalog, and the $40 million bought fabric. And for fabric, it worked like nothing in marketing history. 8 months later, Tiger won the Masters by 12 shots. He did it in a red Nike shirt with a swoosh on his chest, the size of a fist. Every camera on the property pointed at that shirt for 4 straight days. A logo on a shirt is a billboard that walks. Television cannot avoid it. In 1998, Nike made it official and spun golf into its own standalone division, headquartered with the rest of the empire in Oregon. A guitar-playing executive named Bob Wood took over as president of Nike Golf, and he would run it for a decade. Under Wood, the apparel money poured in. The shoes sold, the shirts sold, fathers bought their sons the hat Tiger wore, and mothers bought the head covers for Christmas. Within a few seasons, Nike Golf Apparel outsold entire competitor companies. On the soft goods side, the swoosh printed money from the very beginning. The trouble was that Beaverton looked at that success and drew the most expensive conclusion in the company's history. If the shirt sells, the clubs will sell too. The first warning came from a courtroom, not a fairway. Nike aired a commercial of Tiger bouncing a ball on a wedge, casual as a man flipping a coin. At the end, he swatted it out of the air like a fly. It ran everywhere, and America rewound it until the tape wore out. Titleist was not laughing. Its clubs and its ball were still in Tiger's bag, and its lawyers argued the commercial sold the public a Nike ball that barely existed. So Titleist sued. The suit was settled, the lawyers went home, and the message could not have been clearer. The companies that actually made golf equipment considered Nike a tourist. Titleist had been winding balls in Massachusetts since the Great Depression. In their world, trust was earned 1 dozen at a time, over generations, in pro shops that knew every member by name. Nike heard the warning and read it as an invitation. In the year 2000, Nike built its first serious weapon, a solid core ball called the Tour Accuracy. But the ball needed a witness, and it got the best one alive. In May, Tiger took the Titleist ball out of his bag and put the Nike ball in play. The equipment world held its breath because every club professional in America was about to learn whether the ball mattered. 1 month later, Tiger arrived at Pebble Beach for the United States Open and won by 15 shots. 15. The largest margin of victory in the history of major championship golf, with a swoosh on the ball. Shop owners who had refused to stock the thing were on the phone by Monday morning. That same season, Nike tore up his contract and roughly doubled it to $100 million over 5 years. The division caught fire. Golf revenue that had barely existed when Tiger signed grew roughly tenfold in his first 2 years, toward $300 million a year. Inside Beaverton, the conclusion looked obvious. The ball had worked. The clubs were next. To build clubs worth Tiger's hands, Nike went to Fort Worth, Texas, and did something surprisingly humble. It hired real club makers. The research shop the staff nicknamed the Oven sat in a low brick building far from Oregon. Inside, grinding wheels threw orange sparks over cluttered workbenches. The air tasted of cut steel and grip solvent. A radio fought with the whine of belt sanders and usually lost. Tour players flew in quietly to have their irons bent and their wedges ground by hand. The building had no sign worth noticing, which was exactly how the men inside preferred it. Among the men at those benches was a grinder named Mike Taylor. Taylor had learned his trade at the Hogan Company a few miles across the same city. If you have watched this channel, you know that name. The craft of Fort Worth forging did not die with Hogan's factory. Some of it walked down the road and put on a swoosh. Out of the oven came forged blades that surprised the snobs. In 2002, Nike shipped its first irons, and Tiger eventually put Nike blades in his bag. The tourists had hired locals, and the locals were good. Then came the single greatest advertisement in the history of golf, and Nike did not pay a dime for it. Sunday at the Masters, 2005. 16th hole. Tiger's ball sat in the collar behind the green, an impossible chip running away from him. He landed it 20 feet above the hole and let the slope carry it home. The ball crawled to the edge of the cup and stopped. It hung on the lip, and for 1 full second, the world saw a Nike swoosh, perfectly centered, on every television on Earth. Then it fell. The announcers screamed. Grown men threw remote controls. In living rooms across America, fathers called sons in to watch the replay again and again, the way families once gathered for moon landings. In Beaverton, an entire marketing department understood they had just witnessed something no budget could buy. Golf's most famous shot of the decade ended on their logo. If ever there was a moment when Nike Golf looked destined to rule the sport, it hung on that lip. Nike being Nike, the company swung big. It released the SasQuatch driver in a shade of yellow you could see from a passing aircraft. It built the Sumo Squared, a square-headed driver with a sound all its own. One magazine compared the impact to a trash can lid landing on a driveway. Purists howled. Nike shrugged and sold them anyway because being loud was the whole point. Method putters followed, then the Covert, a driver with a cavity carved into its crown like nothing else on the rack. Some of it was brilliant, some of it was a costume. All of it was expensive because in golf equipment, the entrance fee never ends. Tour vans, fitting centers, ball plants, patent lawyers, staff players by the dozen. Nike paid the fee every single year and told itself the breakthrough was 1 season away. But a golf club is not a sneaker. This is the sentence that should have hung above every desk in Beaverton. A swoosh on a shirt appears on camera for 4 hours every Sunday. A swoosh on an iron appears for a quarter of a second, blurred, at the bottom of the frame. Television built Nike, and television cannot see a golf club. Worse, golfers do not buy clubs the way teenagers buy shoes. They buy them from a fitter they trust, in a shop they have visited for 20 years, from brands their fathers played. Even with the greatest golfer in history under contract, Nike never captured more than roughly 10% of the equipment market. At Tiger's absolute peak, 9 out of 10 golfers looked at the swoosh, admired it, and bought a Titleist, a TaylorMade, or a Callaway instead. The shirt sold because of Tiger. The clubs had to sell on trust, and trust was the one thing Nike could not manufacture. There was one more cruel wrinkle. The Greengrass Pro Shop, the little store beside the first tee, decided what most serious golfers played. Those shops ran on relationships older than the swoosh itself. Their buyers had shaken hands with the same Titleist reps for 30 years. When the Nike van pulled up, they were polite, they took a demo set, and they ordered 6 of everything. 6, while the established names sold out entire walls. No commercial on earth reaches a man who trusts his fitter more than his television. Then the ground itself gave way. The financial crisis of 2008 hit golf harder than almost any sport because golf is the first luxury a worried family cuts. Rounds fell. Courses closed by the hundreds. Tee sheets that once filled by Tuesday sat open on Saturday morning. But the manufacturers kept flooding shelves anyway, and the industry drowned in unsold drivers as prices collapsed into a shrinking market. In 2014, the largest sporting goods retailer in America fired hundreds of its in-store club professionals in a single day. Television hosts read the layoff numbers on air like casualty reports. Manufacturers answered the shrinking market in the worst way possible by releasing new drivers faster, sometimes 2 flagship models in a single year. Every release made last season's model worthless on the rack. Margins thinned, inventory piled. The whole business was cannibalizing itself in public. The message traveled through the business like a cold wind. Golf equipment was no longer a growth story. It was a knife fight over a shrinking table against rivals who had been fighting that exact fight for a century. This was the moment a careful company might have quietly stepped back. Nike did the opposite. In January of 2013, on a stage in Abu Dhabi, Nike unveiled the future. Rory McIlroy, the world number 1, freshly signed to a contract reported at $200 million over 10 years. Beside him, Tiger Woods re-signed the same year, the running total of his own Nike contracts now climbing toward $500 million. 2 number 1s, 1 swoosh, and a commercial where they needled each other like brothers. The advertising world called it the priciest pairing in golf history. Nike flew journalists in and staged the reveal like a product launch. For 1 week, golf led the sports pages without a single shot being hit. That same fiscal year, Nike golf revenue reached its all-time peak, nearly $800 million. For the first time, the division brushed against the top of the equipment table. From the outside, it looked permanent, the way an empire always looks permanent in the photograph taken right before the decline. The division had the 2 most famous golfers alive, the loudest logo in sports, and a peak it would never see again. But the clubs took the blame almost immediately. Rory changed 14 clubs and a ball overnight, and his game collapsed for most of that first season. He missed cuts. He walked off a course in the middle of a round. At one tournament in Florida, he quit after 26 holes, blamed a toothache, and flew home while the cameras watched his courtesy car leave. The headlines wrote themselves. $200 million, and the man cannot finish a round. Commentators said the quiet part on live television, that the money had cost him his swing. It was mostly untrue, and Rory proved it magnificently the following summer by winning 2 majors with Nike clubs. He added 2 more big titles that same August, the hottest stretch of his career, swinging the very clubs the pundits had buried. It did not matter. The damage was done in the minds of ordinary golfers, because the story confirmed what they already believed. Nike paid stars to play these clubs. Nobody chooses them. For a brand built entirely on aspiration, there is no deadlier sentence. Nike Golf would not live to see its 20th birthday. The division, born in 1998, had 18 years. By 2014, the countdown was already running, though almost nobody outside Beaverton could hear it. Tiger's back began to fail, surgery followed surgery. He missed cuts at 3 majors in a single season and then stopped playing entirely for more than a year. The walking billboard was off television, and with him went the entire logic of the operation. Meanwhile, the accountants in Beaverton ran the same review they ran every year and reached the same conclusion they reached every year. The apparel made money, the shoes made money, the clubs and balls did not. The only difference now was that nobody powerful was left in the building willing to overrule the spreadsheet. But the slide had already started while the stars were still smiling for cameras. The revenue told the story in plain numbers. Nearly $800 million at the peak, $769 million the next year, $706 million the year after that, the division's worst result in half a decade, down more than 8% in a single year. Inside the industry, Nike Golf was now openly described as the worst performing division of the world's largest sporting goods company. Every rival could read the same public filings, and every rival did. The numbers were not a secret, they were a countdown. The vultures did not even bother to circle politely. Sales reps whispered about it in parking lots. Buyers at the big retail chains trimmed their Nike orders and braced for the end. Inside Beaverton, the review meetings grew shorter each quarter. There was less to argue about. A business that loses money in its best year has no defenders left by its worst one. And still, from the outside, almost no one imagined Nike would actually quit. Giants trim, giants restructure, giants do not surrender. The confession came in the price tags. In early 2016, the Vaporfly driver, launched at $400, was suddenly selling for $150. The fairway woods fell from $250 to $100. In golf retail, a markdown like that is not a promotion. It is a company clearing the shelves before the funeral. Golfers who had ignored Nike at $400 bought 3 at $150, the retail equivalent of attending the estate sale. Every rep, every fitter, and every shop owner in America read it correctly. The strange part is that the equipment had finally gotten good. The blades out of the oven were winning respect from the harshest critics in the game. The ball was legitimate tour hardware. Reviewers who had spent a decade mocking the swoosh printed grudging apologies. Club testers ranked the final irons among the best of the year. After 20 years of tuition, Nike had finally learned club making at the precise moment Nike stopped wanting to know. But Nike was not looking for a buyer, and that detail said everything. That same summer, Adidas hung a for sale sign on TaylorMade, its own struggling club business, and waited for offers. Nike did not even try. On August 3rd, 2016, brand president Trevor Edwards announced the equipment exit in a short corporate statement. The company, he promised, would remain the undisputed leader in golf footwear and apparel. Translation: we will keep the shirts and burn the workshop. Existing production would simply run until it stopped. No sale, no successor. Within hours, the rival club maker Mizuno posted a public joke offering open tryouts to Nike's abandoned tour staff. The industry Nike had tried to conquer for 2 decades was laughing at the exit. For the people inside, it was no joke at all. Rory McIlroy posted a message of sympathy within a day. It was not for himself. It was for the Nike golf employees who had, in his words, worked so hard and made genuinely great golf equipment. Read that. Twice. The star hired to sell the clubs spent his farewell defending the people who built them. In Fort Worth, the oven went cold. The grinders and engineers who had carried Ben Hogan's forging tradition into the swoosh era packed their tools. Some of them, including Mike Taylor, later started over in small Texas workshops of their own, hand-grinding irons for golfers who cared. The craft survived the corporation. It usually does. But the paychecks did not. Consider Titleist. While Nike spent 20 years buying Lightning, Titleist sat in Fairhaven, Massachusetts doing the most boring thing in business. The same thing, well, forever. It never signed the biggest star on earth. It never built a square driver or a yellow one. It made the Pro V1, put it in more bags than anyone else, and let the tour count the pellets every Sunday. Titleist changed owners more than once in those same decades, and the ball never noticed. New owners came from finance, from overseas, from everywhere, and the factory in Massachusetts kept winding on. That is the difference between a golf company and a company that plays golf. One is built on a product golfers refuse to give up. The other is built on a contract, and every contract ends. Nike could outspend anyone on the planet. It could not outweight a company from Massachusetts that had already been waiting for 80 years. Here's what I find genuinely painful about this period. Nike quit golf equipment at the exact moment the equipment deserved to live. Talk to the people who tested the last generation of Nike clubs, and they will tell you, quietly, that the stuff was finally excellent. The blades were beautiful. The ball won majors in other men's hands. 18 years of tuition had finally been paid in full, and the student walked out of the school the week before graduation. Companies rarely die of bad products. They die of impatience. And impatience is the one thing a sneaker company can never cure. The sneaker business trains you to expect the world to change every season. Golf does not change every season. Golf barely changes every generation. That mismatch, not a fire hydrant in Florida, is the real villain of this story. And that brings us to the sentence promised at the start. Years later, Phil Knight was asked plainly why the company killed its own golf equipment business. The founder did not mention Tiger. He did not mention scandal or surgeries or fire hydrants. He called it a fairly simple equation and said, "We lost money for 20 years on equipment and balls." 20 years. Not the bad years, all of them. The division lost money through the Pebble Beach massacre, through the chip on 16, through every red Sunday of the greatest career in modern golf. Knight added that the following year was not going to be any different. With an equation like that, the decision needed no villain at all. $500 million to one golfer, 20 years of losses on the gear he carried. A division that never earned even 2% of the company's revenue. The spreadsheet had been screaming for 2 decades. In the end, Beaverton simply stopped covering its ears. There is something almost admirable in the honesty of it. No spin about strategic refocus. No blaming the market, the weather, or the star. The founder looked at 2 decades of red ink and named it plainly, the way a golfer names a score. You do not argue with the card. You sign it and walk to the next tee. Knight signed it. The most competitive man in American business accepted a loss. And that, more than anything, tells you how unwinnable the game had become. So let the record show who did not kill Nike Golf. Tiger Woods did not kill it. He gave it 14 majors of free television and the most famous golf shot of the century. Rory McIlroy did not kill it. He won it 2 majors while the accountants sharpened their pencils. The club makers of Fort Worth did not kill it. They ground world-class blades inside a company that measured them in quarters. Nike Golf was killed by a belief, formed in a boardroom in the 90s. The belief that golf clubs could be sold like sneakers, on Fame, on Flash, on the Swoosh. Golfers, especially the golfers watching this channel, knew better all along. A club is not fashion. A club is a tool you trust with your Saturday. It gets handed down, re-gripped, and defended in arguments at the 19th hole. Fame rents that trust for a while. It never owns it. And here's the part that should sting in Beaverton to this day. The trust Nike needed was for sale the entire time, just not for money. Titleist earned it with dozens of identical white balls year after boring year. Ping earned it with a garage and a putter. Hogan earned it with dirt under his fingernails. Trust in golf is paid for in decades, and Nike only ever offered cash. The old heads in the pro shop saw it coming before any analyst did. Ask them today, and they will tell you the same thing. The swoosh was a guest in golf. Guests, even generous ones, eventually go home. The epilogue scattered in every direction. Tiger signed with TaylorMade for clubs the following year, though the swoosh stayed on his shirt. Then the strangest marriage in sports finally ended in January of 2024. After 27 years, Tiger left Nike Apparel entirely for a logo of his own, a red tiger with sun rays. Nike still sells golf shoes and shirts profitably, exactly as the spreadsheet always wanted. And the clubs scattered too. The SasQuatch drivers, the yellow balls, the blades from the oven drifted into garages, estate sales, and online auctions. Then something quietly funny happened. Golfers started collecting them. The gear nobody chose at full price became the gear people hunt for at any price. Dead brands grow the one thing living brands cannot buy: memory. Somewhere a collector pays more for a mint Sumo Squared today than a pro shop could charge for it new. The sound of a trash can lid, it turns out, ages into music. The oven story had one more chapter too. The men from the Fort Worth benches kept grinding, some for boutique makers, some under their own names. Their hand-finished blades sell to golfers who wait months and pay gladly. Ben Hogan City keeps producing Ironmen, whatever logo signs the checks. Even the yellow ball got a second life, fished from ponds and sold by the bucket at driving ranges, still refusing to be ignored. Collectors now trade tour-issue blades stamped with Tiger's initials for sums that would have embarrassed the accountants who closed the program. Scarcity finished the marketing job the budget never could. But the game remembers, even when the boardroom forgets. $500 million for one-man swing, 20 years of losses behind the loudest logo on earth, 18 years, start to finish, for the biggest brand in sports to learn a hard lesson. Golf cannot be bought. It can only be earned. Somewhere tonight, a golfer pulls a dusty driver from the garage and sees a faded swoosh on the crown. And he remembers a Sunday afternoon in April. A ball hung on the lip of a cup for 1 full second, and the whole world held its breath. Maybe that is the fairest verdict on the whole 18-year experiment. The company failed. The clubs did not. The people who built them are still building, and the people who played them are still playing. Only the swoosh moved on. So tell me your side of it. Did you ever game Nike clubs, the SasQuatch, the Square Sumo, the Blades, the Yellow Ball? Did a Nike driver ever betray you on a Saturday morning, and which one? Drop the model and the year in the comments, because those memories are exactly what this channel is built from. If this story earned it, a like helps more than you know. And if you want the next rise and fall the moment it lands, subscribe. The archive keeps growing and the game keeps remembering.